Hello and welcome to the Rhythm Changes podcast. I'm your host, Chris Fraser. Today's episode is with Vancouver vocalist and composer Shruti Ramani. Shruti and I have played a number of gigs together over the years, and I consider her a good friend. We recorded this episode in the living room of her West End apartment on an exceptionally comfortable couch. Actually, it was just me sitting on the couch. Shruti was sitting on the floor, but I think that picture kind of tells you what the vibe of this conversation is like. Her debut record, Jaya, that came out last year with her group Raagaverse, has been critically acclaimed and is currently nominated for a Juno in the 2025 Junos that are coming up this weekend in the jazz group category. And while, the Junos are kind of top of mind for us, most of the conversation is actually just about the music itself. We get deep about Jaya and what the process of recording and arranging was, who she was influenced by, and ultimately what this album has meant to her. I recommend possibly giving the album a listen before jumping into this episode so you can sort of follow along with some of the references that we make, if not just because it's a great record to listen to. But either way, please enjoy our conversation. My guest today is an incredible Vancouver-based vocalist hailing from Mumbai, an arranger, as well as a composer. Her recent debut record, Jaya, with her all-star group Raagaverse, is currently nominated for a Juno. It's my immense pleasure to welcome back to the podcast, Shruti Ramani.
Hi, Chris. Thank you
Shruti.
for having me.
Yes.
Because,
No, thank you for having me. We're in your apartment right now in the West End.
Yeah, I think it's really cozy and chill, and I'm really happy to see you in my home.
Vibes are extremely cozy.
Yes.
But also extremely chill.
Yes, extremely chill, and I'm really happy to see you in my home, and I'm happy we get
happy to
chat.
Be here. Yeah.
So
Yeah, we've already been chatting for like
maybe an hour and a half.
Almost an hour now.
Didn't press record, but that's okay.
No, yeah. But that's good. All the juicy stuff we've already gotten through that.
The gossip is done.
Yeah.
Now
yeah.
we have to talk business now.
That's right. Yeah. The gossip. Well, we got our fill of gossip. Maybe we'll resume the gossip after the podcast.
Maybe we'll
over.
have to do more. Yes.
Yeah. So you got a lot going on right now.
Yes, life is very multifaceted right now.
Mm-hmm.
For the better or for worse.
It's very diplomatic.
Definitely for the better. Yes, the Juno nomination is.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I certainly wasn't expecting it, and it's pretty shocking to me. But it's really sweet at the same time. But the shock factor of it is something I'm still getting used to. In a good way, and also, wow, like that's jazz album, and the record is something. It's jazz and it's something else. It's a lot of things.
I mean,
it's interesting and fun.
I was re-listening to the record today, and it's amazing. It's such a cool record. It makes me so kind of like happy that something that sounds like that is being made like in Canada, but also by like friends of mine. It is a really cool feeling.
I think a lot of it does come from the interactions that I've had with friends.
Of course.
The sound has come from there. And I think every musician I've met in the time that I've lived in Canada had something to do with my musicality. Yeah. Because I've tried to be a sponge. I've tried to keep my ears open. And there's just so many Vancouver legends, including yourself, that I get to call you my friend. So that's pretty sweet deal.
I don't know if I've reached legend status yet, but
I think you're legendary.
Am I legendary?
Yeah.
All right.
I think you gotta own that.
You're the
now.
one with the Juno.
Gotta be on your website now.
Yeah. Vancouver legend, Shruti Ramani.
Yeah. Definitely not used to those parts of it, but the record is, I think, the most insight anyone's gonna get into who I am. Minus if I spoke.
So you feel like it's
a
that
good
personal
representation of like what I hear and the sounds I love, and
it seems like I feel like it is a very Shruti album. Like getting to know you as a musician and as a person, it's like it really is like it seems like a pure expression of your self and your personality.
Yeah, and it's definitely complemented by having friends and as band members that have such beautiful musicality to bring, and there's so much attention that they pay to the music, and they have and they've Noah especially his arrangements on the album. I'm so grateful to have met someone that can realize my music in the way that I more than what I can imagine. And
were you when you like first conceived of this group?
Yes.
Were you thinking of horn arrangements and string arrangements and stuff?
Actually, no. I think as we started to come up with the record, I think when we started to kind of make the decision of recording to begin with, I think that's when those ambitions or the dream big kind of moment happened, where we're like, if we were to give this the best shot that we can in this moment, like what are the things that I imagine? And the guest artists, I wanted them to be special and meaningful. So I started to think of who could contribute to the music and support it.
Yeah.
And the people we picked were perfect and such beautiful souls. And I think it was an opportunity to bring more magical
Who's playing trumpet
moments
on that one track?
So it's Faven.
It's Faven. Yeah, great.
Another Vancouver legend.
Yeah.
Faven, of course, does it all. Is a beautiful singer. Is an absolutely amazing master trumpet player.
Yeah.
Plays the bass.
She's playing a lot of bass lately.
She has her bass gigs.
She did 2 bass gigs last week.
Yeah, and wow, I'm always inspired by her, and we have it's been really nice to be her friend too.
Yeah.
And I think Noah and I both were thinking of Faven at the same time, which was another sign that she absolutely had to do this on the track. Is
it's perfect. It's perfect. You guys like soloing together in that moment. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I think it was really meaningful. We just did it once or twice. We had it, and that's most of the record. Is we've just maybe played it once or twice. And it is what it is in that moment. So
that's
it was
cool.
very speedy.
Right,
recording process. But
that's kind of how it goes.
And that's where the the musicality and the talent of the people that were on the record, like that shines, because they just showed up and they played like so immensely beautiful.
Yeah, I was kind of saying in our personal preamble that it does seem like a lightning in a bottle kind of situation. I mean, like how long was the recording process?
We did it over 2 days.
The whole thing?
The whole thing.
Strings.
We actually recorded 11 tunes, but only 8 made it onto the record. We have plans to maybe record or release the rest in the imminent future. But
cool.
So the 8 tracks.
You got to put that all in the deluxe edition that comes out in 10 years.
Probably make a vinyl out of it.
Yeah.
Definitely. The artwork is really
business mindset.
I'm hustling right now. Yeah.
You're hustling.
No, I'm learning on the go. I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah, making a real record and
and having 8 people, guest musicians come in on and have them record their parts.
Where was it recorded?
It was at Monarch.
Monarch, yeah.
And it was great. Sheldon, shout out to Sheldon, our sound engineer. It was so easy to work with. He's the most, prompt and the most efficient person that I've worked with. It's like he's so speedy and he has the best ears. So I think everything was good energy.
Awesome. Yeah, that must have been a crazy 2 days. What were you guys eating like?
I think we got really good Mexican food.
Oh, yeah.
One of the days we got pizza because we gotta go. Yeah, classic.
Yeah.
That was good vibes. We were eating together. That's always nice.
I feel like that's super important for a good recording session. You got to make sure that the food
you gotta
is
have
good.
the vibe, the band hangs, and you gotta. Do we use explicit words on this podcast or
Yeah,
no?
we use them explicitly.
So yeah, shooting shit is
shooting the shit
with your band members.
Yeah, you can say that. You can say that on Rhythm Changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't come at me later.
That's so
we can
funny.
edit it out if that's.
We won't.
Okay.
that was just so. That was adorable.
I tried.
Yeah.
That's not my personality in general.
You may shoot the shit on this podcast. Yeah, that's what you want. You want to maintain that vibe. You want to keep people happy. Food keeps people happy.
Yes.
And yeah, you just want to keep the energy up because
it's a long day.
Recording is exhausting.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah.
And I think I think this probably happens to majority of musicians. And I think me as a singer, I can speak for myself.
Oh my God, yeah.
Is, your instrument is, it's a lot for the instrument when you're doing an all day thing and you want to get your album.
Yeah.
You want to sing so perfectly that that's what the album's going to sound like. And that's a lot of pressure and it depends on the day you're having. Like, have you slept well or were you too excited for it? And I think nerves are definitely a thing. And with voice, it can be so vulnerable, an instrument, especially when recorded. So that you hear every breath and you hear every nuance of your pitch, your tonality, and I think the self-criticism can kick in. And
of course,
you're like, that was mildly flat, or like, that's not good enough for the recording, and then you get hypercritical. I'm sure instrumentalists probably face this in a different way.
Of course,
but the same thing essentially, which is
of course,
like.
Because
the finality of it, I guess.
Exactly.
Like, this is it. This is what it. And the record is.
I'm sure there's people will get obsessive and they'll try to do more takes. They'll try to re-record. They'll try to book another day, or and I think the thing about it being in this tradition is that I think part of it is that you have to just take what you get out of the process, right?
Yes.
Because if you're recording a live record, people are going to appreciate the aspects of it that are live,
yes,
which are the imperfections and the spontaneity and all that kind of stuff.
And there's something super beautiful about that.
Yeah,
of course. I think the vulnerability in your voice is like it's kind of like snapping a picture of how you were in that moment. Yeah. And there's something special about that.
Of course, yeah.
You get used to it the more you listen to your record.
Yeah,
too.
like you become like I've made a record too. We were just talking about this, and your relationship to this piece of your own personal history will be constantly changing. Right. Because at first you're going to be like, oh man, I could have done that so much better, or depending on how much time goes by, where you're just like, oh man, if I were to do this whole thing again like a year later, knowing what I know now,
yes,
right, even if it's only been a year, I don't know about you, I'm sure you're like this, where like,
would I love to re-record some of the vocals that went on this album? Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think that's like the beauty of growth, because now I know from listening to the album that I've grown in certain ways. Yeah. And I also try to acknowledge that I'm proud of who I was.
Exactly.
Because, it's just kind of being vulnerable and being like, this is the sounds I like. Yeah. Even if they don't intuitively go together. maybe culturally they're a little far apart.
Well,
but there's threads where
Yeah.
you start to see more of yourself and your influences, and you share that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you
Well,
you put it in.
I think that's
time.
what's so charming about this record is that it is so clearly very earnest, and it's very it
Definitely
really
passion project.
yeah
Vibes. Yes.
yeah, and it's like because you can't just conceive of this by accident. Like it's clearly like a very strong and rooted expression. Like it's something that's really coming out of your experience.
That's true. And I was trying to acknowledge just the other day how maybe it's a build up to so many changes in my life that I made in order to.
Oh my God.
I
mean, how long have you lived here now? When did you move
7.5 years, I guess.
Dude.
Like this September, maybe it'll be closer to 8.
So like moving to Vancouver, doing a bachelor's degree, making a band, recording something, and getting a new Juno nomination in 7 years.
Yeah.
You're like speed running this thing.
I think that's definitely underdog.
Yeah.
I think it's just been so impactful. Like falling in love with jazz. It has crafted this whole experience and these opportunities and this relationship with my band members.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of been all leading up to this moment for us, which is really sweet, really unexpected, but it's like definitely a nod in the right direction in terms of making sacrifices, like moving away from your family and stuff.
Of course, yeah. So I wanted to ask you, I mean, obviously, like Hindustani music is not just an influence, it's like half of what the music is. But on the jazz side, like as far as like the time feels and everything go, what were some influences or maybe some references that you were drawing from to like determine like what the feel was going to be like for any of the given tracks?
Well, I really I had a process for coming up with the feel for each tune, and it all happened in different ways.
Okay.
Which is a very strange thing because I'm more melodically oriented and curious. Generally, I find myself thinking about that a bit more musically. And so
makes sense.
I would initially come up with the melody would kind of lead everything. That would be my home. Like that's
right.
I think for me as a singer, I guess where I start or my foundation, and everything is around it when I'm thinking compositionally and writing for myself. And I would come up with I would start to hear harmony. And these ragas are very they have a strong pull, and there's certain harmonies that I thought would start to sound interesting against the raga that I was dealing with or the melody was based in. So that part came together first, and then there's this like track called Ghungarva, which I love
that one.
Yeah, it's like the fastest tune of the track.
That one sounds like a Joe Henderson tune to me or something.
Yeah, so exactly. That's kind of what I was like, where it's coming from is like all the things that I was curious as a learner of the art form that is jazz. Like I was getting into bebop, and I was catting with Indian solfege, and I was trying to learn these bebop melodies like a bunch of Charlie Parker tunes like Cheryl, but using Indian solfege to kind of get it under. And just
we've played
this
Cheryl.
Agility. Yeah, we've played Cheryl together on a bunch of gigs, and like a bunch of other like maybe Dizzy, Joe Henderson tunes. Like I've lifted some solos, like some ideas, and it was just fun to kind of explore it with Indian solfege and see like the agility part of it. And then that kind of the composition Ghungarva very, very much like a bebop tune.
Yeah.
The setup, it's so up tempo that, how up tempo swing feels is very much like what a tabla would do.
Yeah.
Playing teen tal, which is like the 16 beat cycle that Gungarva, the composition, is based on.
Okay, yeah.
So each phrase is 16, like, imagined within a 16 beat cycle called teen tal. And I was like, okay, this feels very much like bebop. These like really fluid 8th note lines at a really high tempo, and I can hear some hits like in the rhythm section that are gonna like contrast the swinging part with like some rhythmic excitement. So these kind of ideas start to come together as I think beyond the melody and harmony.
Yeah.
So that's the story of Gungarva, because I love bebop, and it's something I'm a baby at, and I love being I love being a learner at something and not knowing much about it and starting to know more. And I love that phase of music.
Yeah, but I feel like your level of musicality is already so developed that you're able to...
Thank you. I mean, that's really kind that you think that.
Well, of course I think that. It's true. And so like... it's great for you to think of yourself as being, a baby at bebop, which I also feel that way about myself, right? It's one of those things where it's like you will spend the rest of your life learning how to do this. And
it's so vast, it's so vibrant. It's just I come from the Hindustani tradition, and I know that I have a long way to go as a practitioner. So I feel like all these people of color musics and arts, art forms, they're so rich, and they take a lifetime. I could, and so it's really nice to have the attitude of being childlike and being like, I don't know, or not being underconfident by any means, but just having the childlike curiosity to learn something from the scratch. Whether that be within your art form or whether you're like exploring other types of music. Like I sing Bach now and go on tours with classical musicians, and Raagaverse is how I feel inside. And then, but I imagine my voices and playing a part in these various musical contexts. And I think that comes from admitting that I don't know much about this, but I do want to know.
Yeah. Well, there's a concept of like metacognition, which is understanding how little you know about something, right?
Yeah.
Which is ironically like a sign of intelligence, right? Like understanding how large the subject matter really is.
Yeah, having the
and lining up
perspective.
What you have with that catalog, I guess, is an important part of really being able to place yourself within that, right?
Yeah, and I think I give myself more credit for the skills that I've built, which is the act of learning, and and the skills that I've built through, say, my Hindustani music training.
Yeah,
my voice is super malleable now, and I can get it to do a lot of things.
Well, that's also what was really cool about listening to the record.
Right? Like you build the learning tools, and then you're like, okay, bebop. Like how do I use the skills that I've built?
Yeah.
Use the strength of that, acknowledge that, and be respectful of it, and then also be like, I don't, this is something new to me. So it's nice.
I mean, it was cool listening to the record because my experience playing with you is like playing standards, like duo gigs playing standards.
Yeah.
And you're singing in English.
Yes.
And it's different.
It's different.
Like, does your voice feel different in English?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think it's like,
because you're using different syllables. You're getting different timbre.
it definitely it feels different, but the vocal techniques, the way that I ornament a jazz ballad is, it feels like exactly what I would do if I was singing like Raagaverse music. The approach is the same, but it feels different in ways that like I'm able to express myself in a different light in terms of when I'm singing in English, it's maybe not as intuitive as say singing in Hindi or singing in Tamil or the languages that I've, learned and spoken with my family growing up. I've always been pretty interested in like being fluent in English because I would I've listened to a bunch of records as a teenager. And I think watching a lot of American media, I guess, on TV channels in India, all these kind of experiences have shaped my experience with English, and I've always hasn't felt different from or different from my regular singing.
Right. Yeah, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's different in any sort of like fundamental way.
Yeah.
But it is different.
Yeah, and it's like singing standards is so different from singing Raagaverse music. That definitely. But yeah, and I do find that maybe singing in Hindi opens up certain aspects of my singing, consonants wise, and like just the sounds that I make.
Well,
so
using
in
like
that
the
way, it's pretty different.
Using the solfege that you use when you improvise.
Yes.
It's so cool.
It's quite fun.
It's so cool.
Keeps you on your toes and you're connected.
And well, because I suppose, like, you memorize the syllables along with the scale itself.
Yes.
So it is kind of like playing the solfege is kind of like playing an instrument that sounds a certain way. Yes. Right?
Yeah.
Because there's certain moments where in the record where you're you have a melodic cell that's happening that you're repeating.
Yes.
And you'll do really cool rhythmic variations on that, or you'll add or take away spaces in between different syllables using the same 4 syllables or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of less is more, and there's so much.
But sometimes more is more too.
More is more in terms of the record in itself in a macro way. It's definitely a more.
There's a lot of more in the record.
But in those moments, like, when you're considering the people you're playing with, they bring the richness, and I think it's kind of making space.
Yeah. Do you feel like they push you to a place where you can't necessarily get in another? I think we definitely push
each other.
Yeah.
They harmonically sometimes take me to places that are really fun to navigate, and we have great chemistry as a band. So like we totally trust each other and go for those musical moments, especially now that we've played this record at a bunch of gigs, and we've played it quite a bit locally. And
well, you're going to play the Junos. You're going to play some of it.
Well, the ACT show that we're doing at Maple Ridge in a few days. That one, we're going to premiere some new stuff. New music. So that's going to be fun. But
nice.
Yeah. There's a lot of trusting. So they push me harmonically. And so the choices on the record were like, the voice is already pretty maximalist in terms of the ornamentation that is in the melody.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the soloing, I think that's where the mode itself, the authenticity of the raga can kind of come through a bit more. And that's what I imagined is in jazz vocabulary, we have all this like moving away from the key, coming back in, like we shift away from the harmony, the tonality. And in Indian classical music, you have a 2-hour concert and it's one raga, one key. And maybe sometimes it's pentatonic. So then you have 5 notes for the 2 hours. And that kind of teaches you a lot of less can be a lot.
Yeah.
And really working with even a small cell like you were mentioning, and kind of contorting it and enjoying those frequencies. And Noah's playing he takes it to those places. Like he's my favorite piano player, and Like he will add things to the music that, like, maybe as a vocalist, I'm inspired by, and it moves me. So it's really nice to have that contrast. Say maybe Noah's solo versus mine, where mine is more tethered to the to the ground or whatever that you want to imagine it.
Yeah,
as.
right. You have like this structure that you're working off of, which is so cool to hear, and it does remind me of, like, maybe like what John Coltrane was doing in the mid to late 60s.
That's a giant compliment.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was listening to it. It sounds like, you sound like a saxophone, or actually, I was deciding, like, is this more saxophone-y or trumpety?
Yeah, people have called me a horn.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the beauty of an instrument like the voice. It can be conduits, and it has a lot more potential than most people realize immediately. It has its challenges because it's so abstract, but like there's so much it can do. And when you tap into that and you keep working on it, because practice is kind of maintenance for the voice. You have to keep the chops up for it to be, because it's not keys you can press, and therefore, if it's abstract, there's a mental game involved in producing something like that a horn could do with the precision. So I feel like it can be a lot more things, and that's kind of what makes it beautiful. It can hold words and emotions, and it can be abstract, and it can be noise. It can be, there's also speech. So there's the whole nuance of talking versus singing.
Yeah. Well, and the cool thing about that is, in the inverse, a lot of those horn players, even when I did a podcast episode with John Gross, he told me about how much he admires the human voice and wants to, like, pay tribute to the human voice in his playing the saxophone.
I think this is obviously coming from a legend like him. I see the validity of that. I've thought about this quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
I thought about how I actually watched myself, a video of myself playing live. I don't do that very often, but it just happened. It just so happened that I watched one, and in which I found myself doing a little hand gesture thing.
Okay.
I think people that have seen me live know this hand thing I do, which is especially when I'm singing like really fast lines or something that requires me to sing something that's complicated at a fast speed, or like sing something that's highly ornamented. I do something with my hand that kind of mirrors the line for me in some way. I don't even realize I'm doing it. Okay, so the other thing is, then that got me to think, like, are vocalists seeking something that is physical to kind of, because everything else is so internal and abstract.
Right.
Maybe the hand gestures or the movements are me trying to find space or physicality to what is an external way to help.
You probably need a way to, like, sort of rein in your ideas, right? Because I mean, the connection to the instrument is as instantaneous as possible.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, when I think about, playing guitar, there's a lot of things that have to happen physiologically before a note happens.
That's right.
Right? And I mean, obviously, same with singing, because you need to take a breath, and you need to, like, be, you got to be standing up the right way, and, like, all of those things. But once you have that set, then you have, like, a very instantaneous connection between your brain and what comes out of the instrument.
Yeah, and hopefully, yes.
yeah. I mean, like, a well-tuned instrument. Like, and so I imagine the voice is probably one of the harder things to rein in, because it's so connected to that. Like, I'm imagining sort of like the the tap that you like plug that you like screw your hose into in the back of your house, right, and something like a saxophone is like a regular garden hose, and the voice is like no hose at all, and you have to find a way to sort of control the stream.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think maybe that's why we're trying to find some physicality to it that we can perceive outwards of us. And you were mentioning what John said is maybe we're trying to be each other. Voice needs something that's physical, like me maybe doing my hand gestures that feels like an instrument. And maybe instrumentalists need to sound like voices. And then
there's the opposite too.
Yeah,
I just played,
really nice
balance. I played at Frankie's this weekend, and with my quartet. David Caballero's playing the bass, and he's soloing over my tunes. Dude's singing. He's singing with that bass.
I've seen Noah does that too, and I think it's the vocalizing or wanting to sound like a voice is, it's been interesting to me because I have a voice and and vocalists want to sound like horns in this tradition. So it's like, it's a nice balance there, and it feels like
it's almost like this unrequited love, where it's like they want to be each other, they admire each other, and at the same time they're rivals of each other.
Grass is greener on the other side.
Exactly,
type of situation.
And so many of us are influenced by singers and vocalists, and
I think it's really nice in terms of like the uniqueness of voice. And I think that instrumentalists have this too, and especially when they get really into their craft as they develop the sound, you're like and I think that in voice is maybe perhaps a little easier in a blatant way.
That's the other funny thing is, this concept, once you get more advanced, of trying to find your voice, quote unquote, right? And obviously that's a good pursuit, but also I've always felt like, well, not always, but maybe more recently I've felt that like the voice is just something that will happen, right? Because like you're born with your voice.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to, I'm sure there's some things you could do to change your voice. There certainly are.
There certainly are, yes.
But as far as like, your instrument, there's always going to be some kind of limitation. There's always going to be. Of course,
yeah. You gotta get to know it and then make terms with it.
Exactly. And I feel like that's what finding your voice ends up being a lot of the time.
Yeah. And what the voice is also ever evolving. And so, it's an exciting journey to be able to discover that as time goes on, and actually spend your whole time and energy being tied to music, because I think that's a privilege.
Well, and the other thing is, the voice is funny because like we call it the voice, but it is the whole body. Yeah, and it's so tiring. It's your mouth. Like we don't call people like mouth musicians, but the mouth is such a big part of the voice. You can't
trying not to be funny, but like the mouth does work over time. Yeah, like in general life.
Totally. I mean, Look who you're talking to, man. I do it for a living.
But it is your whole body, and it's also your psychological, as is for every other musician. I think it is, but the voice is so vulnerable that if you're overwhelmed with emotions, your voice is gonna waver, and this is part of humanity. These things have happened on stage to me when I've had like a what do you call those musical moments where you feel like life is okay and this is why we live it. When you hear your friends play and they sometimes play stuff that shakes you to your core, and you're like, you can't help but cry. And like, that's happened to me a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm, that's my body's physiological response
Hey,
to
that's beautiful.
Some of these moments. But like,
Yeah.
the voice will let you know that
Yeah.
you're thinking about these things. And I think that type of vulnerability in the voice it's scary, but it's beautiful also. But it's very revealing. So
yeah, I think maybe that's probably what you try to get to, because when I think of singing, I think of something that's very exposed.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a lot harder to hide behind some sort of maybe illusion or trick that you can conjure up with an instrument or something like that, right? It's very revealing, and it's very
you can
honest.
Just auto-tune, set up a pedal, auto-tune your voice 100%.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Nah.
I mean, most of my
bad outcome.
But it's still like it's just so revealing, and you want to be able to get to the point on your instrument where you can feel that exposed.
Yeah.
Right?
And be comfortable in navigating it and having command over it.
Yeah.
It in some ways keeps you tethered to life, because sometimes life is a lot and can be unexpected in terms of the events of life that can unfold.
Yeah.
But like, having this long-standing relationship with something like music, it can like keep you on the path and make you feel safe when maybe some other parts of your life are a little bit more chaotic.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily my case right now. My life is pretty chill.
That's good.
Like the vibe of this interview, I guess.
Right.
It's pretty chill right now.
Great, good. Yeah, those things are always going to be in the background, right? That's something I'm sort of dealing with. Is I didn't used to have like performance anxiety.
Right.
And it's something I've started having more recently. And I've talked to a couple people on the podcast about this already. But one thing I'm learning is really just to zoom out. Right? Because the anxiety will occur as a result of sweating the small stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And small stuff can feel really big, right? Like,
yes.
Anything from, your feeling of being perfectly prepared to play something, or your feeling of how the next 2 hours are going to affect the rest of your life or something like that. And right. And like the grand scheme of things is that, you can zoom out and be like, oh wait, yeah, this actually won't really amount to anything in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I don't think people remember you by the few notes you fucked up at a gig.
Yeah.
I'll say messed up instead.
No, you said
it's too late
you
now.
Said it's on the pod.
It's happening again.
It's on the pod.
But yeah, I feel like it is hard to navigate. Like,
yeah,
I think as life progresses and where you are at life and your relationship with performing can change, and you have to navigate all the ups and downs. I've definitely been nervous, and I've definitely had gigs where I've done extremely well and or what I would be proud of, and then there's gigs I'm like kind of too critical to pay attention to what is happening in the moment.
Yeah.
So, you can live in your mistakes, or you can move where the music's taking you next, or you can be hung up on the previous bars.
Yeah.
And lose track of what's going on next.
Oh my God.
And I don't mean losing track of like where you're in the chart. I mean more like psychologically kind of being hung up in the previous bars.
Yeah.
But doing the deeds, but still thinking about the bars that maybe didn't go so well.
Yeah.
These are the things I think that happens. And I think especially as a vocalist, I feel like mental health is so tied to improvisation.
Yeah.
How your ideas flow. If your voice can be a good conduit on that day to communicate your ideas, it depends on your mental health and the anxiety or nerves that you feel on the day of the performance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, or in the moment before the performance or after.
Yeah. That's totally true because, like you can, in general, like if I'm speaking for myself, like I can understand that I'll have a gig that I'm playing and I'm working myself up about it, and I can have the understanding that I'm sweating the small stuff and none of this really matters. And depending on where my mental health is at, those things will either matter or not matter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like my understanding of the situation will it could be that it just won't matter to me in the moment, and I'll just continue to be anxious despite my understanding that being anxious isn't helping anything.
It's worse when you know.
Yeah.
You're like,
There's that
I'm still doomed to
Yeah.
believe that everything is doomed.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be a lie if I didn't admit that, I've probably had been extremely nervous or been super self-critical about how prepared I am for a gig. And my partner certainly, my partner Kia, who I'm engaged to now, is...
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was like, the podcast listeners need some context.
Yeah.
And they also need to ship this. So
yeah. Shipped. Consider it shipped.
I like that. Thank you. So Kia knows is a PhD student in clinical psychology.
That
so,
helps.
I have someone that has deep knowledge of or a deep curiosity of the inner workings of the brain. And I totally reach out to her when I'm like having a spiral, maybe like two. It's always related to music because I care about it so deeply, and like it can be such a beautiful thing, and then that also means that there's these things that you can't take lightly. So that's just not
when you're outside of it, like you are right now.
Yeah.
And you understand that it's coming from the fact that you are just very passionate.
Yeah.
That's a really positive thing.
Yeah. So it's like one of those career paths where it gets deeper than business because it's friendships, and it's like it's a very meaningful exchange, something that's very vital for you and I.
It's
people like us.
It's fragile.
Yeah.
It's to a point where it's like very fragile. It's
this
very
is tangentially we were just talking about the voice, and now we're talking about musicians being fragile. And strong and vulnerable.
Well, I just mean like when you get deep into it, you're at a, and like maybe when you're getting to a point where you can be very creative and very risky, maybe you're dealing with fragile territory.
Yeah.
Right. Which can yield, gold. You can get such amazing stuff.
That is so true.
Out of that. And that's why, like you said, you really trust your bandmates, and that's why that's so important, I think. You have to be able to trust them to go into the depths with you.
Yeah, for sure. And, you definitely teach each other things, not just about music, but about life. And
of course.
You have to navigate learning the business aspect of things together, because you're a band, and that's pretty, that's pretty neat and special. And
music is just it is part of life, and so you need life to have music. And
I think this music is so vast, so like the experiences we gather with the people that inspire us, like there's just so much richness that we have access to. And I always think about this, and I feel so much gratitude for like life in general as a musician, because like Vancouver is awesome.
It is
like just the friends we know,
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's a small but so vibrant a world that we all know each other in some regard, and we have a lot of friends, and a lot of these collaborations and a lot of these beautiful albums have come from people nurturing relationships with each other.
Yeah.
And the vibrancy of the scene. So I always think about that once in a while.
Yeah.
Because we're part of it. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's true. We are part of it, and we're helping it thrive in our own ways, right? Like,
yeah, we're saying our piece.
Yeah. I mean, this is a little podcast. This is, like 100 people are going to listen to this.
Yeah.
Maybe
we're
more.
Saying our piece.
We'll see how the Junos go. Maybe we'll get more listens.
This has been a very deep conversation. So.
Yeah. It's good when it gets deep.
Yeah, like maybe this is not what the podcast listeners were expecting to hear, but
I didn't get a chance to listen to your first episode with Will. I will be honest.
Man, it's been so long since we did that. I feel like it's probably been 2 years. At least. And I remember maybe I was going on my first tour with Ostara or something of that nature. And it's so long ago, yeah. We had a great time.
I'm looking it up right now. It was just over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Raagaverse has existed for unofficially 2.5 years.
Yep.
Or so, which is it's a long journey.
It was podcast official in February of 2023.
I think things moved pretty quickly, but more organically.
Okay.
Than I anticipated.
Nice.
And I really loved that. It's like, I think we were building a community that likes our music at the same time as building our sound. Yeah. And it all happened in a slow, organic way. But then once we had the album recorded, I think things sped up considerably, with this Juno nomination and things. Like, it's a lot of the universe sending a sign that this music like matters.
Yeah.
To other people as much as it matters to me, which is not something I've really thought about.
Yeah, is that something you necessarily care about?
I have such a robust group of friends, and especially my family and my fiance, and like they're great, like they're big fans of me. They're super fans of me. Like they love my music, and I've never really thought about it in terms of people will love this music if I make it. Like that thought never crossed into my head, because it was all a crazy experiment where I wanted to kind of see how all these pieces of my identity, if represented by sound, like what that would sound like in an album with the people that I love. So this was the objective, but I had no expectation for what type of response would follow.
Right.
Like,
you weren't thinking like, this is going to be fire.
I thought people would be like, oh, this is kind of bizarre, doesn't like fit, or I didn't think negatively at all. But I did have I always thought of, okay, here's one possibility and here's the other, which is people either love it and acknowledge that this is like a sound that's completely new and they enjoy it for what it is, or that they think it's too different, the sound is too different or too alien compared to anything they've maybe heard before. And
have you gotten
which
that?
Is fine. I mean, is it when they say you get hate, you've made it? Is that what they say?
Yeah,
you've made it when you get a hate comment on your social media post or something.
I mean, I guess so.
Yeah,
sure.
we've gotten a few. Now that we're Juno nominated, I'm I guess back in the day I thought that was a bad sign, but I guess it's a sign that we made it.
No, it means enough people are enough people are talking about it. Obviously, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily you shouldn't celebrate it or anything.
No.
But it's you should ignore it for the most part.
Yes.
But also it's good to know who you're pissing off.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to be pissed off by music. I never made this album to necessarily invoke the feelings.
I mean, has anyone
happiness,
said it was boring?
That one I haven't gotten yet.
Then then
because everyone
A+.
either like they're like, oh, that was interesting, which can be a like a vague
I love
comment.
interesting.
Interesting can be loaded. It can mean the thing that
Sure.
you want it to mean in the moment, depending on your facial expressions.
Yeah, I guess it depends who it's coming from.
Which you can't see right now on this podcast. So
yeah,
interesting.
Okay. Well, let's see if I can. Okay. Tell me what each of these mean. I'll give you two. So that was really interesting.
This seems like you heard something like that was informationally valuable to you.
Yeah. Okay. What about this?
That was the tone.
Okay. What about this? That was interesting.
You definitely have something to add and you're not happy with it. So, yeah, it's like, yeah. The pause is like, I have something to say.
The pause gives you everything, yeah.
The pregnant pause.
Yeah.
So.
yeah, 10 months.
No, I think we've gotten, obviously the love has been so immense. Like, I wouldn't sweat the small stuff as we were saying earlier, but like, there's a few people out there that maybe this is too rich for. It's melodically rich, it's harmonically rich, right? So I think if your aesthetic is that you like minimal music, like then I cannot be mad at you for not liking my album. Like that's fine.
Exactly.
I think that's the beauty of like having musical tastes is not everyone has to love the music, but it still has value. Because
absolutely
2 people like it,
Yeah.
And that's valuable to them, and
sure.
That's the validity of the album in itself. But yeah, I've been shocked and pleasantly surprised by how much positivity has come our way since we put this record out. And it's like the first thing I've made. Like it's the first thing I've ever made. And so it's insane for it to be seen in this way. So yeah.
Totally, yeah. Have you like seen or heard any insights from people since it's come out that have made you kind of look at it in a new way? Like, has anyone ever pointed something out where you're like, oh, like I didn't even consider that, but you're right, or something like that? I'm like,
I have those all the time when I talk to my partner, who's super insightful, and it's like my bouncing. We bounce ideas at each other. But yeah, I think like since the album has come out, I think people's perception of the album, I think it's reached more people. That's one thing, which is always nice. But I think there's been a lot of curiosity around how the Junos are perhaps expanding their definition of what a jazz album could sound like. And that's really nice.
Yeah.
There have been jazz fusion albums up there.
Yeah, of course.
There have been very little vocal albums up there in that category because, if it's a vocal, if there's lyrics and there's a lot of voice, then it usually gets put into some type of vocal jazz category. So, I like that the boundaries are kind of expanding in some ways in terms of what
for sure, yeah,
to reflect what is happening today, which is really nice. So I never thought about that, but then kind of first I had to come to terms with the fact that I was Juno nominated, which took forever because I had to run around, and the day I found out, I had to just like run around for a few hours because I had too much energy, and it was like my heart was beating fast whole day.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I was in shock for sure. It took me a long time to process it.
How do you find out?
So it's announced like on radio, on CBC and stuff, and then sometimes, and it's also it announced on the website, and they told us what time it would be announced.
Okay.
And it was Eastern time, so it was really early for us. So like the first thing in the morning is us finding out.
Wow.
And as I was scrolling, I expected maybe a global album of the year, or maybe South Asian recording.
Okay, yeah,
like,
sure, yeah.
It could be anything, the sound is very vast. So I was like, okay. But it was jazz album of the year. So it was very interesting and very exciting in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So that that's something that I hadn't thought about, like the value of it being nominated in this category. And friends have been really nice to me, and they've been so they're championing me all the time, and they're so sweet to me, and they all the exchanges I've had have been so meaningful and sweet since the nomination, and I'm really grateful for all the friends that I've made. Like, it's really sweet. No complaints. Very full.
I think it's I think it's definitely in the right category. I think it's
If you see the people in the band, yes, that's what it is.
Well, yeah.
And this is what we all love and we know. So.
Yeah, I mean, Jodie's been nominated for so many.
She's so
Junos
seasoned, and she knows the in and outs, and she's a great bass player.
Yeah.
And she's pretty old school in her playing, and that's like suits the oldness of the music that I bring. Trying to bring to the band. Yeah. Yeah,
there's definitely like a weight to how everything is being played.
Yeah.
But also, like, there's, when you get into the improvisation, there's like a lightness and like a playfulness to it too, which it's very endearing for me to hear that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's really common for jazz records, especially in this jazz records that tend to get nominated for awards, for example.
Right.
There'll be, I'm not talking about anybody in particular, but I feel like there's a tendency for them to have a very polished studio sound.
Yes.
That's my impression of records that tend to get nominated for this kind of award.
Yeah, and I find that maybe the people that have been nominated generally are super seasoned and legends. That's the word I've been using, in their own right, and also incredible musicians. And I can see that maybe that also plays into how polished the record sounds, because it's just the sound that they've culminated over the years of maybe making so many records. And I realized that when I looked at the people I'm going up against and the people that I admire deeply, is like the other nominees and the albums that they've made, is like you can see the immense, vast like expertise and sound and the thoughtfulness that they've obviously comes from practicing and being in it and doing it so many times around, with a new vision every time you make a record, right? So you can tell that maybe that polished feeling comes from that, and I feel like rightfully so. It's my first record, and it's like Noah and Nick's first Juno nomination as well as mine. Jodie's been nominated a bunch of times before. She's with Ostara and for her own album as well. So like for us, it's we're so raw. We're music is something that takes a lifetime, as we've been talking about today, and it's like a relationship that just builds and builds, and that's how I kind of got okay with the rawness of my album, because it's so stunning in capturing who I was in that time and who we were collectively. And I like that we're the underdogs, and we get to be amongst these giants that have such stunning records already that they've put out. And
of course,
Christine Jensen's big band album that's been nominated, like I've been listening to it, and Jeremy's album and Carl's album, like these people are just incredible. So just being in that list,
you're in good company.
What
how validating must that be?
It's been a whole month and I'm still like, the Junos are a few days away. So if you're listening to this before the Junos, then like I hope this is suspenseful for you now.
It is,
because both of us, like none of us know. And it's there's always a 20% chance. And that's always fun to think about. Do
you have any expectation?
No, I don't actually, because
You weren't expecting to get nominated.
No, I wasn't expecting to get nominated, and I'm able to acknowledge the fact that...
Did the label choose to submit it?
No, I chose to submit. Like Diane Cadota, who's Raagaverse's manager.
Mm-hmm.
She's really helped us put the album together by applying for a Canada Council for the Arts grant.
Yes, yeah.
So she's been very instrumental in like getting our record, and she manages us in general.
Mm-hmm.
So she was the one that submitted a Juno application, and we just were like a shot at the dark, because you should never let an opportunity pass by without giving it a shot, because you never know what happens. And that's really what the attitude that I had.
Yeah.
We all have acknowledged that it feels special to play this music. There's something about it that's way too special to be able to put into words, and that's enough affirmation for us to make moves like submitting it to awards or whatever, with no expectation, of course, because that's what you would do. Is to send it out into the universe and see what is coming your way.
Yeah.
And then to find out we're nominated on the first thing that we've made together. Like, I'm still in shock. I feel like maybe after the Junos are over, I'll finally be able to process it all.
Kind of relax.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you seem pretty relaxed right now.
Yeah, I'm. We're chilling in my home, and my cat is around, and I think my cat is generally very good at keeping my whole demeanor chill.
Yeah.
Unless he's having the zoomies.
This is Bebop. Bebop the cat.
Bebop the black cat that lives with Kia and Shruti. I hope he becomes famous one day. So if not me, my cat can be the celebrity.
I mean, that sounds like the name of a Studio Ghibli movie.
Yeah, he's got one of those really charming, Kiki like face.
Yeah, well, he has like a chiseled jawline.
Yeah, he's a long noodle with aesthetic.
Yeah.
What do you call that? The face bone structure or whatever.
Yeah. He has
and he can look really
crusty
structure on some days. So he's very much like me, I guess.
Yeah.
When I'm like dressed for Raagaverse, I think I'm the most spectacular, extravagant.
Man, you're one of the best dressed people I've ever seen in my life.
I think the best dress I'm ever gonna wear in my life will be at the Junos.
Oh man.
And I will post about it.
Yeah.
Just so people can see what Indian fabric can look like.
Yeah, that's
it's
like
just too
that's
much.
like low key part of like what your sort of like public persona is, to me at least. It's like you're this like this killing vocalist that's like making really cool new shit, but also you just like wear the absolute like tar out of suits. Like
I think there were gigs I showed up to in slippers, and I think one of my profs from when I was at Vancouver Island University, early into when I moved into Canada, one of the profs was watching the live stream, and he was like, "You wore slippers to the gig?" I was like, yeah, I guess I didn't pay too much attention to what I was wearing. This is
Vancouver Island, man. Come on.
Yeah.
This is hippie city.
He said something that stuck with me, because he said, you want to show up to the gig dressed as good as you think your music is. Like,
okay.
Dress as rich as what your music is like.
I mean, I actually do kind of feel that. Yeah, I think that is a...
And it's like, you're a conduit for the music anyway, Clothing is just another form of expression, and fashion and music, it can all be fun. I know it's notoriously a bigger thing in the pop industry, but, jazz musicians have been incredibly dressed in the past.
Oh, yeah.
And Indian musicians are often incredibly dressed at their gigs. And I think there's something about it. Like, it's not about like the expensive like Gucci or Prada or whatever. It's more so about expressing yourself in a way that's comfortable for you.
Yeah.
And that makes you feel like excited about yourself.
Totally.
And I think that for me is like, I'm very simple in my presentation day-to-day life. I'm just...
Sure.
I have an easy haircut. I like comfortable clothes, etc. But on stage I'm the most extroverted and the most confident version of myself.
Right, yeah.
And you know, like I've that extroverted clothing comes into play where,
Yeah.
you know, it's super rich looking because I think my music is super rich and I like to pay respect
it does track. Yeah, like
it does track.
you have, as you describe it, you have a maximalist attitude towards music, and the suits are maximalist.
They are.
There's nothing
like wear your glares so you don't get eye burned.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there isn't something that's like understated.
More
or maybe
is more.
maybe I'm missing stuff, but
no,
it seems
I think it's
you lay it out all on the table.
Yeah, I do, and colors
fits.
excite me, like
Yeah,
because I do see like jazzes harmonically maybe colorful is the way that I describe it.
Yeah.
Even though I don't have, what is it, synesthesia? What is it? Where you
sure,
can see,
yeah.
when you can see colors when listening to music. I don't have that, but like I do imagine it to be colorful, and the clothes and the colors in the clothes, all of these type of things kind of excite me.
Yeah.
So the more colorful, the better, the more detail.
Yeah. Are you going to have do you think you're ever going to have like a blue period?
Like a blue period?
Yeah, like I think it was like Monet or something who had like a blue period.
Right.
Or was it, no, maybe it was Picasso or something, but they
just drawing in blue,
just only using the shades of blue.
Well, you know, there are colors I lean towards
a
lot, and like the album artwork, for the album, those are the type of colors that I lean towards, like darker blues and then pops of really bright colors like pink and oranges and gold. And so I definitely have, the music kind of brings these colors to me. So when I imagined the sound of the album, I was thinking purples.
It sounds like you have synesthesia.
Well,
you're describing it that way.
It's more
I kind of
related,
have my opinion about synesthesia is that I think like more people have synesthesia than we think, because we always associate it
paying attention.
We associate it with the sense of like color or something, right?
Yeah.
But we're always associating sounds with shapes.
Right.
We're always associating them with emotions and all those kinds of things. And I feel like that those are abstract ideas that have nothing to do with the subject matter.
Yeah.
But we're making those connections anyway. And those are connections that you can make immediately when you listen to something, right? Like you listen to a minor chord and you're like, that's sad.
Right.
I feel like that's synesthesia.
Yeah.
That's sort of a learned synesthesia.
They're meaningful and they're deep. Because when you're kind of thinking of a feeling, it can be nuanced, it can be with many shades. And I think that does dictate how I think about harmony sometimes. Like, when I'm thinking of the lyric, sometimes it's indicating happiness, but there's an undertone of sadness. And how can I reflect that through harmony?
Those are my favorite lyrics.
So these are, I think, you're right. In a lot of ways, it's like making it more perceivable for ourselves.
Yeah, just like having something like music and then associating it with something that isn't music.
Right.
I think most of us do that.
Yeah.
And I think people who don't do that maybe are not listening. I don't know. Like, I feel like it's we almost have like no choice but to associate the things that we sense with things that aren't the things that we sense.
Yeah, and listening deeply and actively is it's a meaningful process.
Yeah, it's just a reaction to stimuli.
Yeah.
Right. That's my personal opinion about synesthesia, is that like, yeah, maybe like you smell orange or something like that, but I think I don't know. I think most of us probably are.
I think we are
going through all sorts of weird ways of
connecting with music.
Stuff.
I think it's like I surprise myself by learning how people engage with music, because it's deep in their own ways and it can be meaningful to different people.
Yeah.
For different reasons and in different ways, and it's always so crazy to find out.
Yeah.
And your friends tell you those things, but yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's yeah, I love finding out, because music feels so personal.
Yeah.
Like your relationship to music is so personal because you first heard a song in a very singular, unique moment in the history of all humans who ever lived.
Yeah.
And which means that your story with music is a complete unique story.
Yeah, and every sound you listen to or pay attention to or you fall in love with changes you and your personality and how you interact with other musicians as a result.
Right.
And that's so nice. Yeah, it's
and then you play with people.
Yeah.
And they have had a completely unique experience learning music, hearing music, perceiving it in their own mind. And yet you can still agree on something in the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's the great part of it is then their perspectives informs and shapes yours as you make music together.
Yeah.
And then that chemistry is building and thinking like you fall in love with certain players more so than others. And for me, it's always been like the person that I enjoy playing with the most in any context is like Noah. Whether we play in duo, if we play in trio, whether we play as Raagaverse, or if I'm like, guest vocaling on some of his projects or whatever it is, it's like that chemistry is so palpable.
Right.
That it's just like there's our influences and who we are.
Yeah.
In this moment, it complements each other and it balances each other out and it boosts the other person's musicality so much more when we interact in that way. So
why do you think it is that you get along so well? Because
I think he's a lovely human being. He's like one of my best friends. Like he is my best friend in a lot of ways because like those musical moments where I mentioned earlier in the podcast about like crying and not being in disbelief at how magical the musical moment was.
Yeah.
I think it's mostly in the recent history been Noah playing on one of his solos or like us playing together and this raw moment happens. And I think we're super vulnerable with each other when we're playing. And that transcends into the friendship too, where we trust each other as friends and like we can
kind of like
have that relationship. Yeah, that resonates both musically and outside of music.
Yeah.
So that only boosts our relationship, and I think that's rare.
Yeah.
Like you can have so many nurturing friendships and musical relationships, and then there's some specific ones out there.
Yeah.
That like push you, make you question what everything is about, and like is a good reminder of what music can mean to you. So I think it's a nice but profound
I feel like it's important to like have that kind of like musical relationship with somebody who sort of like can understand you, can like come to your level and like really, really understand you and not just in a cordial way, but like is really willing to like understand your experience.
Yeah.
And when you have that, then you can it just helps you to open up to them, and it helps like you can create a bond with somebody, and then that is what allows you to try to push yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And the band dynamics as well, like when you have contrasting personalities, it's really nice sometimes because the energies are balanced. Nick as a drummer, like, and now we're really great friends too, and he has this very energetic, like Noah and I probably are laid back, and then Jody and Nick have this energy to them that complements our kind of laid back vibes. So like Nick will bring musically also like bring that aliveness
Yeah. He's
in our band dynamic.
Totally.
And he's a jokester. He can crack jokes, and he's really funny. He's the funniest man I know.
I feel like he only cracks jokes.
He cracks a bunch of jokes. But he's also like deep and meaningful when you find him.
Well, that's
vulnerable.
the funny thing, right? Like you have a guy like Nick who's just like outside of playing, like all he's doing is just doing bits. He's always trying to get one over on you. He's always being a little stinker. I say that lovingly, but that is that's the only way I could describe.
And musically,
Nick
it's the same, right? Like he's.
But you play with him, and it's so pure.
It's pure, and he's like bringing the unexpected, which he does. In general conversation, you never know what he's gonna say next, and you're gonna be thoroughly surprised every time that he says something. Yeah. In a lot of times in a good way, and sometimes in a did you really say that kind of way, and it's endearing, right? And like musically it's similar, but he brings that spontaneity.
It's like undeniable,
and it just adds.
And his ability to pick up on something in the moment, rhythmically, right? If you throw something at him,
he will know.
He will throw it back instantly.
Yeah, he knows.
I'm not sure if I've ever played with somebody who can do it like quite the way that he does it.
Yeah, and he navigates it really well. He knows his pockets, and he is a great listener, and he's super respectful and a great friend too. So I really like him, and this is kind of it's all helped the band's dynamic, and it's been so great to even chat about my band at length. I don't think I do that very often. I don't think I've spoken about my album at length like this.
Oh, good.
Ever.
Good. That's
on the media. So I think people will find out a lot that they didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. This is like this will be the definitive, I think, the definitive interview in quotes about the Raagaverse Jaya.
For all the inside scoop.
Totally. And this isn't even the juicy stuff.
This is not the gossip that we mentioned earlier on.
I'm just joking. For the record, I'm joking.
Yeah, we were just shooting shit.
We're just shooting the shit. We're just shooting the crap.
Yeah. But yeah, it's been so much fun chatting about.
Yeah, and I said this on the first day. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm so happy you've been
really
nominated.
Kind.
I love playing with you. I've always admired you as a musician.
Likewise, and playing with you has been an honor, and I'm really excited for your record that you plan to record this year, and it's gonna come out soon.
Nice, you're dropping that.
Yeah,
you're dropping that. Yeah,
please stay tuned because
totally.
I'm sure everyone's as excited as me and to find this out. Am I dropping news I shouldn't have dropped, or?
It's been, I guess.
Is this gonna be the exclusive?
Yeah, it's so exclusive that it doesn't even exist yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it will exist.
Well, now you're lighting the fire under my ass.
Now it's gonna have to happen, because then I will look like I was lying, and I can't.
Right.
You can't let that happen. So.
Yeah, and then in a year or two, you're gonna be interviewing me for my Juno nomination.
That's it.
Yeah.
I'm not a great interviewer. I'm an average interviewee.
I pretend to be. I'm not really either.
No, you're doing great. This has been a lot of fun.
It's actually not that hard. You just have to sort of...
We just have to chat and what we do generally.
Yeah,
but
you have to be interested.
I would love to cheer you on when you get your Juno nomination.
Well,
and
you heard it here first.
Yes.
You're going to be on the board.
Manifest.
You're going to be on the board. You're going to be choosing.
I'm going to vote for you.
You're going to be my man on the inside.
Yeah, I will do it. Yeah. Tell me how to join, Caris.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks again. It was beautiful talking to you. I wish you the best of luck at the Junos and otherwise.
Thank
the Junos
you
is just the
much.
beginning, I'm sure.
Yeah, so it's really nice to have had this chat.
Absolutely. Thanks, Shruti.
Thanks, Chris. See ya.
Thank you to Shruti for hosting me in her apartment. It was so great to catch up and talk at length about her process. Now, in case you missed it, this is Shruti's second episode on the podcast, her first episode being just over 2 years ago with previous host Will Chernoff. Amazing how much things can progress in just 2 years. Who knows how many other guests from the podcast may move on to great recognition and acclaim. If you want to say you were there for their first episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast now so you can never miss an episode in the future, and stay in touch with us at Rhythm Changes by going to rhythmchanges.ca and signing up for the free weekly newsletter. As always, thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.